Okay, so let's take some time and talk about how you handle managing materials in your PSI, PMI classroom at the elementary setting. So, Kristen, would you like to start us off?
Sure. I know for me, one of the biggest things was to be prepared ahead of time in my classroom, making sure when I start each unit, I printed out all of the papers I would need. If it was the classwork homework, making sure I printed classwork on one side, homework on the back of the same sheet so that they could bring that home with them and reference back. Parents really enjoyed that so that they felt that they could help their children at home. They could look back with them. I printed out all of the unit plans and I had that in the front of a binder. So I would use a binder, I would put the unit plan, and then I would have the assessments, all the classwork homework printed out for the whole entire unit. I know it sounds like a lot, but you never know when that printer is going to break. So if you're able to get it all done and store it in your classroom, it's really nice to have it ready to go. And then if your pacing changes a little, if your kids are struggling and you're need to go and pull other stuff, you still have it there. It's not a last minute decision going. Also making sure I downloaded the presentation to my desktop. I would do it once at the beginning of the unit and then every single day save it again. So any notes we made, drawings, they were all in the presentation saved that we could reference back to as well.
So, just a little addition there. If you're teaching multiple sections, maybe you teach 3 sections of math because you're departmentalized, you would really want to download and have a presentation file, one for each section. So, as Kristen said, at the beginning of each class period, open that presentation up, take whatever notes you may add a slide and add extra questions in or something like that, and you're able to save it specific to that class period. So then when your next section of students come in, you can just open their version of the presentation and pick up where you left off with those students. So that's helpful if you teach multiple sections of them.
As far as like day-to-day materials that you need, I always liked to keep things managed or kind of together by table. So say for instance, polling devices or manipulatives or anything that you're going to need for the lesson. Generally, I would keep them sort of off to the side. I had a storage area where every table would have, a basket with manipulatives or a basket with the polling devices. And then I just had one person assigned and their job was to go and grab whatever was needed for the lesson and they could bring it out to the table so that it was easily available. And I didn't have a lot of kids moving around the classroom trying to get things, just one for each table would go pick things up, bring it to the table for the lesson. And then at the end of the lesson, just take it back and store it aside.
And really one other difference too, as Kristen said about printing all your classwork and homework out, when you begin in 4th grade, especially with the PMI, with the math materials, students from 4th grade on up should get the whole packet of classwork homework printed out. So it's like one whole section. It's numbered throughout and divided by section and by lesson, but they should get the whole thing and keep that in a 1-inch binder. Or if you could just upload it to their Google Classroom if they're going to be answering through that way. But they should have the whole thing. Whereas for the younger grades, that one you print out the classwork on one side of the paper, the homework on the other side. So what you're able to then do is you've done the classwork questions in class, then you in turn send that paper home for homework. So the parents have some idea of what was going on and are able to see the types of questions you did to help them help the students with the homework if needed. So keep that in mind that there's a little bit of difference for the age levels there. We also do advocate for the students to have access to the presentation, especially from 4th grade on up. So if they are keeping a binder and don't have devices in front of them at all times, whether they're in school or at home, then you really should print the presentation out 6 slides per page from 4th grade on up. And the students keep that in the binder along with their classwork and homework. If they have devices, and have access to them at all times, then you're able to take a PDF of the presentation and just put that in their Google Classroom or share that with them. But we do want them to have access to the presentation. They shouldn't be, writing down all the words and all the notes from the slide. So for the younger grades, there may be some times where you might find you need to print a slide or two out. For example, if they're doing manipulative blocks or base 10 blocks in second grade, they may not be able to see it on the board and need it in front of them to actually count it out. So you may have to print a slide or two out for them to have easier and closer in front of them with specific things like that. But other than that, the younger ones really can just follow along with the presentation as you're teaching it.
And one other idea is that you may want to, when you print materials, print one extra set at least, because you're always going to find a student who has lost their materials, took their book home, forgot to bring it back. Suddenly a new student appears in your class. Having one or two sets available so that you can easily continue to teach and not have to worry about the child over there who has nothing in front of them will make your life a lot easier.